Chief Petty Officer Dana Cross stepped off the dark gray helicopter as the rotors slowed behind her. The wind blew her short brown hair back, and her eyes scanned the new naval base like a hawk. She carried no extra baggage, only a military backpack and a calm face. To others she looked ordinary, but inside Dana was sharp, trained, and deadly. One of the few female Navy SEALs in the force. The base was hot and dusty, built on the edge of a foreign coastline. It wasn't fancy, just a maze of concrete buildings, sandbags, and old steel fences. Soldiers moved around, busy with drills and orders. But as Dana walked past them, many stopped to stare, not because they recognized her, but because she was a woman in uniform, something rare in SEAL teams. Some eyes were filled with curiosity, others with doubt, and one pair of eyes, watching from the tower window above, were filled with quiet anger. Lieutenant Mark Dresden stood with his arms crossed. "Another transfer," he said under his breath. "Why did it have to be her?" Dana reported to the commanding officer, gave her salute, and handed in her transfer papers. The commander looked at her record and raised his eyebrows. "You've seen more action than most men twice your size," he said with a smile. Dana didn't smile back. She simply replied, "Yes, sir." She didn't like showing off. She believed in actions, not words. And while others liked telling war stories, Dana stayed quiet. She had nothing to prove, and at least not yet. That evening in the mess hall, the room was buzzing with voices, laughter and metal trays clinking. Dana sat alone at the edge of the long table, slowly eating her food. Some soldiers peeked at her, whispering, "Is that her? The SEAL chick? I heard she once fought 3 men alone in Afghanistan." "No way. She looks too quiet." From across the room, Lieutenant Dresden walked in. He wore his usual smirk, confident, relaxed, and too relaxed. He noticed Dana, paused for a second, then walked over. "Chief Petty Officer Cross," he said loudly so everyone nearby could hear. "You transferred from Team Bravo, right?" "That's a surprise." Dana looked up, nodded. "Yes, sir." Dresden smiled. "I've heard things about you," he said. "Some say you're dangerous. Some say you're lucky." He leaned in a little. "I think you're just good at hiding behind stories." The room grew quieter. Everyone listened, pretending not to. Dana looked him in the eye, calm and steady. "I'm here to work," she said, "not to explain." Dresden narrowed his eyes. He didn't like the way she didn't react. He wanted her angry, embarrassed, anything, but she remained like stone. Over the next few days, Dana followed orders, trained with the team, and stayed focused. She ran the obstacle courses faster than most, hit every target in the shooting range with quiet precision, and during hand-to-hand combat practice, she never showed off. But no one could knock her down. Still, Dresden kept watching her. Every small success made him more uneasy. He thought SEALs should be loud, aggressive, proud, but Dana was none of those things. She was silent, patient, and strong. And that made her more dangerous than he could understand. One morning during a briefing session, the commander stood in front of the team. "We have a mission simulation tomorrow," he said. "Chief Petty Officer Cross will lead the tactical plan." Some soldiers looked surprised. Dresden raised an eyebrow. "She's leading?" he asked, pretending to joke. "She just got here," the commander replied without emotion. "She's the most qualified on this base." Dana said nothing. She simply nodded and took the mission file. Her eyes didn't look proud or nervous, just focused. Later that day, Dresden stood outside watching the sun dip behind the wire fences. Another soldier came up beside him and said, "You think she'll mess it up?" Dresden replied slowly, "I don't know," he said. "But if she doesn't, then we've got a problem." He didn't know it yet, but the problem wasn't Dana's strength, it was what she would awaken in everyone else. A quiet respect, a shift in belief, and for Dresden, the beginning of something he wouldn't be able to stop. The sun rose early the next day, painting the sky in gold and soft red, but inside the base things felt colder than usual. Everyone knew the simulation mission was happening that morning, and everyone knew who was leading it. Chief Petty Officer Dana Cross. Some soldiers were curious, some were nervous, and one man, Lieutenant Dresden, was quietly angry. He didn't like losing control, and he especially didn't like being ordered to follow someone he didn't respect. In his mind, Dana was just lucky, not worthy. He believed respect came from rank, not from reputation. At the tactical tent, Dana stood by the digital screen, going over the plan, The room was full of trained soldiers, some older, some younger, all of them listening to a woman give orders. Dana spoke calmly, pointing to the map. We split into 2 units. Echo moves to the east wall. Bravo takes the tower. No radios. Only hand signals. Her voice was low but clear, not a single word wasted. She moved like a person who had done this 100 times. Because she had. Dresden sat at the back, arms crossed. He leaned over to the soldier beside him and whispered, "She talks like a robot." The soldier didn't reply. He was watching Dana closely, trying to learn. The simulation began in the hills behind the base, where fake buildings and bunkers were set up. The mission was to rescue 2 hostages and neutralize enemy guards. All timed, all judged. Dana's plan was simple, silent and smart, but 10 minutes in, something went wrong. Dresden broke away from his assigned team. He ignored Dana's signals, moved in loud and fast, firing fake shots too early. The enemy team spotted them. The hostages were killed. Mission failed. Back at the base, the commander reviewed the footage. He frowned. "What happened to the silent entry?" Dana didn't point fingers. She simply said, "We were compromised." Dresden jumped in quickly. "I didn't hear any clear signal from the lead," he said. "Maybe next time we use someone more experienced." The room went quiet. Dana stood there unshaken. She didn't fight back. But something inside her shifted that evening. While others relaxed in the common area, Dana stayed behind at the training yard. The sky was dark, the lights were harsh. She practiced hand-to-hand combat drills alone. Punch, block, duck, strike on like a machine. Her fists hit the pads like thunder. A young soldier named Reed walked past, stopped, and watched. He had been on her team during the mission. "Ma'am," he said, walking up slowly. "I know it wasn't your fault." Dana paused, turned. "It doesn't matter whose fault," she said. "Failure is still failure," Reed nodded. "But it wasn't your failure," he said again, this time louder. Dana didn't reply. She went back to her drills. In the next few days, something strange started happening. Soldiers began watching Dana more closely, not out of doubt, but out of quiet respect. They saw how she trained longer, how she never complained, how she didn't gossip or argue. She was just consistent. Even in silence, she was teaching them something. That respect isn't demanded, it's earned. Through actions, not noise, but Dresden noticed it too, and he hated it. One morning, while Dana was checking gear in the supply room, Dresden walked in. The room was small, the walls lined with shelves of rifles and armor. He stepped closer than needed, pretending to reach for a radio. "You think they respect you?" he said under his breath. Dana didn't look at him. "I don't need to think," she replied. "I'm not here for respect. I'm here to serve." Dresden smiled bitterly. "You're clever with words," he said. "But sooner or later, someone like you always makes a mistake." Dana turned then, calm and firm. "Someone like me?" she asked. "A SEAL?" He stepped back slightly, surprised by her stare for the first time. He looked uncertain. Later that night, the commander called Dana into his office. "I reviewed the mission again," he said. "You followed protocol." Dresden didn't. He handed her a file. "You're cleared. I'll handle the rest." Dana took the file and nodded, but deep down she knew this wasn't over. Dresden had power, and pride doesn't break easily. It cracks slowly. Then it explodes. Outside, the base lights flickered in the wind. Dana stood by the fence alone. Hands behind her back, she looked at the stars, silent as ever, but inside she was no longer just a soldier. She was becoming a symbol, to the new ones, to the watchers, and soon, to Dresden himself. A storm was building, and she wasn't afraid. She was ready. The heat was rising on the base, not just from the sun, but from the tension in the air. It had been a week since the failed simulation, and even though no one spoke about it out loud, everyone knew who had ruined it. But Dana Cross still said nothing. No complaints, no arguments. She just kept doing her work. Quietly, perfectly. Lieutenant Dresden, on the other hand, grew more restless. He saw the way soldiers watched Dana now, with quiet admiration. He noticed how even the new recruits copied her movements during drills. And that respect burned him more than any desert sun could. The commander announced a new test, a 2-day survival and combat simulation deep in the nearby rocky terrain. It would involve real exhaustion, real problem-solving, and team coordination under pressure. Dana was placed in Team Alpha. To Dresden's shock and quiet anger, he was assigned to her unit. He laughed bitterly under his breath. "Again?" he said. But orders were orders. They left before sunrise. Traveling in silent trucks, the hills were silent. The wind dry as the team arrived, the commander gave a final message. "You'll be monitored," he said, but not helped. "Succeed or fail, this will show who's ready for real combat and who's not." Dana stood before her group. Calm and firm, she gave clear instructions. Broke the team into pairs. No one questioned her. Not even Dresden, at least not out loud. But he was already planning something reckless, something to remind her who had real power. Hours passed, the sun climbed high. The team moved across dry hills, through narrow paths and rocky ledges. Dana led from the front, watching every movement. She checked their compass, scouted from high rocks, and corrected their path. But Dresden lagged behind, muttering. He rolled his eyes at every stop, took long breaks, and once even whispered to the others, "She's leading us in circles." One young soldier, Harris, shook his head. "No, she's right. Look, this cliff leads to the target valley." Dresden didn't respond. He simply stared at Dana like she had stolen something from him. That night, under a sky full of stars, the team made camp near a dried riverbed. They ate ration bars in silence. Dana walked the edge of the camp, checking safety perimeters. When she returned, Dresden was waiting by the gear tent. "Alone, still pretending to be a leader?" he said quietly. Dana paused. "I don't pretend," she answered. Dresden stepped closer. "You think they respect you?" he asked. "They only follow you because command said so." Dana didn't answer. She started to turn away. That's when it happened, without warning. He slapped her hard across the jaw. Her head jerked slightly. But she didn't fall, she didn't shout. She didn't even blink for long. She looked at him with cold, calm eyes, and then slowly straightened her back. "You just made your biggest mistake," she said softly. The others heard the sound. They came running. But by the time they arrived, Dana had already walked away. Dresden stood there, breathing heavily, his hands trembling. "Did she hit you back?" Harris asked. Dresden didn't reply. He couldn't speak. That night, Dana didn't sleep. She sat alone on a rock, her face turned toward the moon. The side of her jaw was red, but she didn't touch it. She wasn't thinking about pain. She was thinking about timing, because she knew something Dresden didn't. Justice isn't loud, it's precise, and it always arrives. The next morning, the team continued the mission. Dana gave orders like nothing had happened. Dresden followed with tight lips and shaky hands. Every time he looked at her, he expected revenge. But Dana gave him nothing, and that silence, that control, it broke him more than a punch ever could. By the time they reached the final checkpoint, the team had completed every objective. The commander met them with a nod. "Well done," he said. He looked at Dana. "You led with discipline." Dresden's fists clenched by his sides. He couldn't take it anymore. As they loaded back into the truck, Dresden whispered again to her, "You're going to report me, aren't you?" Dana turned slowly, looked him in the eyes, and said one word, "Eventually." Then she climbed into the truck, leaving him standing in the dust, alone with his mistake, alone with his fear, alone with the truth. He didn't break her, he exposed her, and soon everyone would see what a Navy SEAL could really do. Back at the base, life continued as usual on the surface. Drills, inspections, meal times, and training sessions, but under the surface, something had changed. A shift that couldn't be seen in reports or logs. A shift that lived in quiet glances, tight-lipped whispers, and stiff salutes. And at the center of that quiet storm was Chief Petty Officer Dana Cross. She didn't report the slap. She didn't tell command. She didn't say a word to anyone. Her silence wasn't fear. It wasn't weakness, it was strategy. In the days that followed, Dana moved like nothing had happened. She showed up early for every session, led her squad with precision, taught hand signals, tactical movement, and pressure point strikes with care and discipline. She didn't flinch when someone called her ma'am. She didn't respond to jokes or stares. She just kept moving, like a river flowing around rocks. Like steel under silk, but others had seen the bruise. Not on her face, she had covered that, but in her silence, in the extra sharpness of her movements, in the way she hit the training dummy with just a bit more force. One evening, during weapons maintenance, a younger recruit named Diaz approached her. He looked nervous, holding a rifle in one hand and Gilt in the other. "Ma'am," he said quietly. I saw what happened. That night in the hills, Dana didn't stop polishing her gear. She didn't look up, but her voice was calm and clear. Then you know what I'm capable of, Diaz hesitated. I just think someone should say something. Dana finally looked at him. Her eyes were steady. I didn't survive war zones by yelling every time someone crossed the line, she said. I wait. And then I move. Diaz nodded slowly. He didn't fully understand, but he felt the weight of her words like something was coming. Lieutenant Dresden, meanwhile, was anything but calm. He walked the halls like a man carrying fire in his chest. He kept expecting Dana to snap back, to report him, to strike him, to ruin him, but nothing happened. And that silence began to eat at him. He shouted more during drills. He handed out unfair punishments. He challenged Dana during tactical briefings, once even calling her judgment cold and robotic in front of a full room. Dana didn't argue. She nodded, rewrote the plan, and moved on, but the room remembered. Not his insult, her control that night. Two of the squad's oldest members, Sergeant Lewis and Corporal Patel, met outside the barracks. They weren't gossiping, they were thinking. She hasn't said a word, Lewis said, lighting a cigarette. That's the problem, Patel replied. That's what's scaring him. One morning a message arrived. The commander had chosen Dana to lead a joint force night raid simulation, involving 2 squads and full combat protocol. It was a big deal, the kind of test that decided promotions, transfers, and respect. When Dresden heard the news, he slammed his fist on his desk. How is she still getting praise? He muttered. No report, no charges, nothing. He didn't understand. Dana wasn't trying to win battles with paperwork. She was preparing something else, something unseen like a weapon under a sleeve, waiting for the right moment to strike. That evening, Dana trained alone on the rooftop. The wind was cool, the lights from the base soft and distant. She practiced combat rolls, silent takedowns, and speed drills, and again, not because she needed to, but because it kept her mind sharp and heart steady. Reed, another soldier from her squad, came up the ladder and watched for a moment. You don't sleep much, do you? He asked. Dana paused, breathing hard. She wiped sweat from her forehead. Sleep slows the blade, she said. Right now, I need to stay sharp. Reed didn't ask more. He knew, even without details yet, that something was building, and when it came, it would be clean, fast and final inside the command office. The top brass had started noticing, too. Dana's reports were flawless. Her unit's performance had increased, and she showed no signs of instability or complaint. One officer said, "She's like a ghost, no noise, no drama, just precision," another replied. That kind of soldier changes everything. Dresden, now more paranoid than ever, began looking over his shoulder everywhere he went. He barely slept. He snapped at junior officers. He couldn't understand why nothing was happening, but that was the point. Dana wasn't reacting, she was rebuilding. Not her reputation, that was already growing, but something bigger. She wasn't just going to survive this. She was going to end it when the time was right. On her terms, with no yelling, no punches, no threats. Just truth, proof, and justice, delivered with the silence of a seal. The stars disappeared behind heavy clouds the night of the test. The moon was pale, almost shy, as if it didn't want to witness what was about to unfold. Inside the base, the air was thick, not with heat, but with anticipation. Every soldier knew tonight wasn't just a simulation, it was a showdown. And everyone knew who the spotlight would fall on. Dana Cross. The commander's voice echoed through the barracks. All units prepare for Joint Force Night operation. Full protocol. 2 squads, 1 mission and 1 lead. Dana. And standing quietly in the second row, eyes narrow, fists clenched, was Lieutenant Dresden, still angry, still waiting for her to slip, still not knowing. He was the one being tested. Dana stood in the locker room checking her gear. Helmet, night goggles, silent boots, blade tucked into her vest. Every strap tight, every tool in place, she moved like a storm cloud. Silent. Steady. Unstoppable. Sergeant Lewis approached her. "We all got the layout," he said, "but just tell us what really matters." Dana looked up. Her voice was quiet. "Stick to the plan. Watch each other's backs. No heroes," then she added, "if anything goes wrong. Improvise smart, not loud." Her calm gave the team confidence. Even the younger ones who had never seen live fire respected her now. Not because she asked for it, but because she earned it. They loaded into the trucks before midnight. Engines humming low, tires crunching gravel, no music, no talking. Just focus. The location was an abandoned training compound 2 hours away. A maze of buildings, towers and tight alleys. The mission, infiltrate. Locate 2 hidden hostages. Extract without setting off alarms or losing any teammates. Points would be scored for stealth. Strategy and teamwork. Dana's squad was Alpha. Dresden's was Bravo, but both were under her command. On paper, Dresden had to follow orders. In his mind, he had other plans. At 1:23 a.m., the mission began. Dana gave hand signals. 2 teams split and moved through opposite flanks. Night vision turned the dark world into glowing green shapes. Dana's heartbeat was slow and even. Each footstep careful, controlled, silent. Within 20 minutes, they secured 2 buildings and eliminated 5 simulated hostiles. No mistakes, no noise, but Bravo squad under Dresden started to drift from formation. He led them down an unapproved alley. One soldier radioed quietly, "Ma'am?" Lieutenant Dresden broke path. "He's going for the central tower." Dana paused. Lips tight, that tower was high risk and blind spots. Open rooftops and potential traps. Still, she didn't panic. She whispered, "Maintain Alpha position. I'll go get him." She moved fast, slicing through the darkness like a blade through water. Alone, she scaled a fence, ducked into shadows, and climbed the side of the tower without sound. At the top, she found them, Dresden and 2 others. Scanning the rooftop, she crouched beside him and whispered, "You left your flank exposed." Dresden turned. Surprised, "I took initiative," he snapped. Dana pointed to the side alley below. "You're surrounded. Simulated hostiles have you boxed in. You just failed the whole mission." He looked down, and for a second the color drained from his face. Infrared lights marked 4 enemy soldiers below. "All aiming at the tower. You ignored the plan," Dana said. "And you just lost 2 hostages and 6 lives." Dresden tried to speak. But Dana had already dropped from the tower. She rolled, hit the ground, and signaled her squad within 6 minutes. Alpha secured the hostages and extracted them through the side corridor. Bravo never made it to the extraction zone. Back at base hours later, the 2 teams stood in the debrief room, still in gear, dusty and worn. The commander read the report out loud. "Alpha squad, full success. No casualties. All objectives met." He looked at Dana. "Excellent leadership. Precise and efficient." Then he turned to Bravo squad. Lieutenant Dresden broke formation, ignored direct mission paths, and risked failure for both squads. There was silence in the room. Dana stood tall, expression unreadable. Dresden stared at the floor, jaw tight, throat dry. The commander continued. "This mission was more than a test. It was an evaluation of field leadership, discipline, and judgment." He held up a folder. A sealed envelope marked, "Transfer and Demotion Recommendation." Dresden's name was printed in bold. But then came the final blow. The commander added, "We also received a report this morning." He held up another file, one written clearly, neatly in Dana's handwriting inside. A timeline of events from the mountain operation, a formal complaint about the physical assault, a list of silent witnesses who later came forward. It was everything, time-stamped, cross-checked, unshakable. Dresden looked up in shock. "You waited till now?" he asked, voice cracking. Dana replied softly, "I wanted the test to finish first." The room was silent. Not with fear, but with respect. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't swing her fists. She let the mission speak. She let the truth arrive on time. And when it did, and it didn't knock, it broke the door down. The air inside the command office felt colder than usual. The ceiling fan spun slowly, as if it too was listening. Chief Petty Officer Dana Cross stood in front of the commander's desk, back straight in her hands, a manila folder. Thick with facts inside the folder, a written report of the incident in the hills. Dates, times, maps, simulation logs, and security footage. Statements from 3 silent witnesses who had finally stepped forward. She placed the folder on the desk without a word. The commander looked at it for a long moment. Then at her. "You waited," he said quietly. Dana nodded. "Yes, sir," she replied. "I wanted the mission to come first." He opened the folder and began reading, flipping through pages carefully. The first report described how Lieutenant Dresden had struck Dana without provocation. No raised voice, no warning, no witnesses at the moment. But the report didn't rely on emotion. It relied on proof Dana had noted the exact time, the training log that showed her location, the small camera mounted near the hill checkpoint which caught partial footage. Enough to show Dresden's aggressive approach, and most importantly, 3 soldiers had added signed statements. Private Diaz, Corporal Harris, Sergeant Lewis. Each had either seen the event, heard it happen, or been told by Dresden himself during drunken slips. The evidence was strong, stronger than any punch, stronger than silence. The commander set the folder down, his eyes narrowed, not with doubt, but with thought. "You didn't want revenge," he said. "You waited for timing." Dana didn't flinch. "I wanted the mission to show who we really are," she said. "He failed on the field. I didn't need to tell anyone. They saw it for themselves." He leaned back in his chair, nodding slowly. "People like Dresden wear their rank like armor," he said. "But you wear yours like a promise, outside." Dresden was pacing. He had heard whispers about the folder. He knew something was coming. He just didn't know how much. Every door that opened made him flinch. Every glance from another officer felt like judgment. He had expected Dana to scream, to hit back, to run to HR the day he hit her. But she didn't. She had waited, and now... He was scared. That afternoon, a closed-door disciplinary review was called. No one outside knew the full details. But rumors ran wild. Dana didn't attend. She didn't need to. Her words were already in that folder, clear, calm, sharp, inside the review room. The commander placed the folder on the table. A colonel, a base attorney, and a senior ethics officer began reviewing the evidence. No emotion, just facts, no loud voices, just truth. Dresden sat in the chair across from them, hands folded, sweat on his forehead. When they showed him the written witness reports, his face turned pale. When they showed him the footage stills, his shoulders slumped, and when they read Dana's final line in the report, he closed his eyes. "I do not seek punishment. I seek integrity. For my team, my uniform, and the name on my badge, there were no lies. No exaggeration. Just a truth too heavy to lift." The decision was made quickly. Lieutenant Mark Dresden was stripped of field command, placed under formal investigation, and given a relocation order. He wouldn't return to that base, and he'd never wear the same level of authority again. Back in the barracks, the news spread like wildfire. Some whispered, some cheered silently, but most just nodded. They understood now. Dana hadn't needed to fight back with fists or fury. She fought with discipline. She fought with proof. She fought like a true SEAL. That night, the team gathered at the training yard for a quiet workout session. No one spoke about Dresden. They didn't need to. Instead, they turned to Dana and asked her to lead the warm-up drills, not because she had won, but because she had endured, and in that endurance, she became a leader. No one questioned anymore. One recruit asked quietly, "Why didn't you hit him back when you had the chance?" Dana didn't pause. She tied her boots, looked at the moon, then said, "A single hit ends a moment, but truth ends the story." They stood in silence after that, the kind of silence filled with respect. Later that evening, Dana sat alone on the rooftop. The wind was gentle, the stars blinking above. She opened a small notebook, the one she always carried. Inside were no diary entries, no poems, no confessions, just one quote, scribbled years ago by her instructor during SEAL training. "Quiet strength is louder than 1,000 shouts." She smiled slightly, because now, everyone understood. The base didn't change overnight. The same walls stood, the same drills ran, the same boots marched across gravel paths, but something invisible had shifted. Not in the concrete, but in the hearts of the soldiers. Lieutenant Dresden was gone, transferred out quietly, his name removed from the roster. There was no ceremony, no farewell, just an empty office, a folded flag and silence, and in that silence, a new respect grew. Not out of fear, but out of something stronger, trust. Dana Cross didn't walk around like a hero. She didn't change her tone, didn't demand anything. She showed up early, trained harder, and spoke only when it mattered, but now, when she walked through the base, soldiers moved aside with quiet nods, not because of rank, but because of what she proved. In the training yard, young recruits watched her with wide eyes. "She's the one who took down the lieutenant," they whispered. "No, she didn't hit him," said another. "She did something scarier. She waited. That became her legend. Not the slap, not the report, but the restraint. Even the older officers, the ones who once doubted her, now began to ask for her insight. They started reviewing her reports first, assigning her leadership drills, and requesting her presence during strategy planning. One afternoon, during a tactical briefing for an upcoming overseas mission, the room was filled with decorated men, captains, field agents, engineers, and weapons experts. Dana sat at the far end of the table, silent as usual. Halfway through the meeting, the colonel pointed at a map and said, "This insertion point is weak, but we don't have a better option." Without lifting her voice, Dana said, "We do." She reached forward, adjusted the pin on the map by 1 inch. "If we approach from the riverbed at 300 hours, there's natural cover and satellite blind spots." The room went quiet. The colonel stared at the map, then slowly nodded. "Confirmed," he said. "We'll go with Chief Cross's plan." That was it. No cheering, no celebration. But everyone in that room knew something had shifted again. Later that day in the barracks, Reed, the soldier who once doubted her, sat next to her during lunch. He nudged her with a small smile. "So, they're calling it the silent operation now," he said. Dana raised an eyebrow. "Who is?" "Everyone," he replied. "They say you won a war without firing a single shot." Dana didn't laugh, but the corners of her mouth lifted. "Words can do more damage than bullets," she said. "If used the right way, in the evenings, when most soldiers relaxed or watched TV, Dana trained in the gym, and slowly, more began to join her, not because they were told to, but because they wanted to learn from her. She taught without ego, she corrected without shame, and most importantly, she listened. One night, a young recruit named Maya stayed behind after the session. She looked nervous, holding a bandaged wrist. "Chief Cross," she said quietly, "can I ask you something personal?" Dana nodded. Maya hesitated, then whispered, "If someone hurt me, someone above me, what should I do?" Dana didn't ask for details. She didn't press. She simply said, "Do not rush. Gather your strength. And when you move, make it clean." That was all. But Maya smiled through tears, and Dana knew that another fire had just been lit. A quiet one, a powerful one. By the end of the month, the base commander called Dana into his office again. He handed her a sealed envelope with a gold seal. Inside, a promotion recommendation, and a note handwritten by the colonel. "For leading with wisdom, not noise, and for teaching us all what real strength looks like." Dana stared at the paper. She didn't cry, didn't cheer. She simply folded it and saluted. That night on the rooftop, the stars were brighter. The wind was softer, and the base felt calm. Reed joined her, sitting beside her on the edge. "You ever think about why you didn't hit him back?" he asked again. Dana looked at the sky. "I did think about it," she said. "But I remembered something my father told me." "What was that?" She turned, eyes steady. "If someone shows you who they are, you don't fight them. You just step back and let the world see them clearly." Reed nodded slowly. No more words were needed. Down below, the next batch of recruits marched past the flagpole, their boots in rhythm, their eyes full of dreams. Among them, some would rise fast, some would fall, but all of them had already heard the story. Not of the woman who was slapped, but of the SEAL who didn't flinch, the warrior who chose silence over rage and became louder than anyone ever expected. The orders came quietly, as they often did for soldiers like her. Chief Petty Officer Dana Cross was being rotated out. A new assignment, a new base, a new team waiting for her somewhere across the ocean. The news didn't spread fast, but when it did, it felt like the wind had changed, not violently, just enough for everyone to notice. Some asked if it was a promotion. Some wondered if it was just routine, but most understood without asking. Her job here was done. The base commander called her in for a final meeting. His office, once cold and distant, now felt more like a quiet classroom. He stood and saluted first. "I don't usually say this to operators," he began, "but your presence changed this place." Dana gave a respectful nod. "I didn't come to change anything, sir," she said. "I just wanted to do the job right." He smiled slightly. "That's why you did change it," he replied, then handed her a single envelope, not sealed this time. Inside was a letter written by someone unexpected, Colonel Mendez, a senior officer who had once questioned Dana's leadership style. The letter was short, handwritten, honest. "You didn't raise your voice, but somehow you were the loudest leader in the room. For that, I thank you, and so will the next generation." Dana folded the paper quietly and slid it into her jacket. She didn't need applause, but words like that, real, honest, Earned meant more than medals ever could. The day of her departure, she packed her gear in silence, boots, books, and the same field knife she carried into every mission. The locker closed with a soft click, the same way she entered the base, and quiet. Clean, no drama. As she stepped outside, she found her team waiting. Not in uniform, not in formation, just standing like brothers and sisters seeing off one of their own. Sergeant Lewis gave a firm nod. You taught us more with silence than others did with speeches. Reed stepped forward and handed her a small object, a patch sewn by hand. It read, "Honor through silence." It wasn't official, it wasn't regulation, but she pinned it inside her vest anyway, right over her heart. As the truck pulled up to take her to the airstrip, Private Maya ran forward, breathing hard. She had grown braver in the last few weeks, and Dana could see it in the way she walked. Taller, stronger. Maya handed her a folded note and whispered, "You were right." Dana looked at her with a small, proud smile. "You were always strong," she replied. "You just didn't believe it yet." As the truck rumbled away, no one waved. They just watched in silence. The same kind Dana had mastered. The kind that meant respect. The kind that meant gratitude. The kind that didn't need words to be felt. Weeks passed and life on the base moved on. New officers arrived, new drills began. New missions came and went, but some things stayed. Like the way recruits listened more closely during lessons. Like the way soldiers corrected their posture during briefings. Like the way Maya now led her own squad with quiet confidence and late at night. When new recruits asked about the empty training room at the end of the hall, someone would say, "That used to be hers, Dana Cross, the one who brought down a lieutenant without firing a bullet." They told the story in whispers, not because it was a secret, but because it felt sacred. They talked about the slap, the silence, the report, the mission, the downfall, and the rise. But most of all, they talked about the way she made them feel, like doing the right thing. The quiet thing was still the most powerful move of all. Far away on a new base, Dana stepped off another transport truck. A new set of buildings, a new sky, a new field of possibilities. But she still walked the same and slow, aware, steady, like a shadow with purpose, like a fire that didn't need to shout to burn. In her new locker, she placed one thing before anything else. The Honor Through Silence patch, and right beside it, a folded note, the one Maya had given her at the gate. She opened it again. "Because of you, I chose to speak up. But first, I learned to stand tall." Dana stared at the words, and for the first time in months, she let a single tear roll down her cheek, not from pain but from peace, because now, she knew. Her silence had echoed farther than any war cry, and her legacy wasn't just in what she stopped, it was in what she started.